Glenn Korn, welcome to the Cipher Brief's dispatches from Kyiv. You've attended a number of very high-level meetings in Kyiv. Has it changed your perspective on how you see the war in Ukraine today?
Yes, it has. And I would say that the meetings we've had have been very frank discussions with a lot of people from different parts of the government and from Ukrainian society leaders at different levels. I've been struck by how honest they've been about the difficulties they're facing. It's humbling to see what they're still doing despite the odds that they're facing. And it's a little bit frustrating as an American to see that, in my opinion, we are still not where we need to be in helping the Ukrainians to defend their country and the values that we share with them.
There's a lot at stake here. You've seen it firsthand, and a lot of Americans back home are still confused about why this matters. Why does Ukraine matter?
I speak about the issue in some parts of the United States, and I hear a lot of very good, legitimate questions from Americans about the aid package that we're offering, how we're going to monitor that aid, how it's being distributed, how it's being used. As I always say, the Ukrainians themselves are open to our doing everything that we can to monitor and make sure it's being used effectively and in the right way. I hear questions, related to our domestic politics, and I think that's the tragedy I'm seeing more than anything, is that the Ukrainians right now have been sucked into American domestic politics, and we need to pull the issue out and remind Americans that if Ukraine loses this war, it will be a major loss for the United States and for all of our children. And as I tell Americans all the time, the family I grew up in, the people I grew up with, we do not leave people in need behind, and we cannot leave the Ukrainians behind right now.
Glenn, I think you bring a really unique perspective to this, not only based on your experience working Russia issues for the CIA as a former senior intelligence officer, but you really have a deep understanding of Russia, the Russian mindset, what Russian President Vladimir Putin has done in the past. Do you think that Russia will ever retreat, or can they be pushed back if they aren't facing more force?
I think if the Russians continue to believe that they have the upper hand, which they probably do assess they have right now, because they are receiving weapons and ammunition from North Korea, from Iran, that are helping them on the battlefield, where the Ukrainians now are facing shortages. I think the Russians will continue their aggression, and they will never be ready to make peace. I think the Russians need to understand that this is not a war against Russia. This is a war to defend Ukraine. And the American people need to understand that. And that if we do not help the Ukrainians stand up now, which is I think the next 6 months are absolutely critical, especially this summer. As I said before, we are all going to be facing long-term consequences for the United States and for our other allies that Americans should not want their children to inherit.
You had the opportunity to sit down with the Minister of Defense in Kyiv. What was your takeaway from that meeting in terms of the motivation that the troops still have really to keep this fight going, even as they're facing a number of hardships?
Okay, so let's remember that many of the Ukrainian troops have been on the line in the trenches for 2 years now, over 2 years. They are exhausted. The leaders we meet with have been working nonstop for 2 years to protect their country. Those of us that have been in war zones or have been in hard, dangerous situations know that even 6 months can be grueling. And so what I'm seeing with the Ukrainians is not only a great resilience, but actually a good sense of humor among many of them, which is heartening. And I have not heard any complaint about the United States' current delay in providing support, the aid package, which I'm very impressed by. They remain thankful and appreciative of all the help they've gotten up till now. But of course, I think inside of all of them, they're waiting for the next tranche. Because when we were here last time, what I heard from some of the commanders is every time they got any U.S. assistance, it was a major morale boost for those forces that had been stuck in the trenches, on the front lines, slugging it out, to protect every inch or every millimeter of their country from a foreign aggressor.
Glenn, you spend a lot of time in the U.S. meeting with different groups of concerned American citizens about what's happening in Ukraine. I wonder, what is your message to those in the U.S. who are trying to better understand the situation there and why Americans should care about it?
I would just say it's humbling to be here. It's humbling to meet with the Ukrainians, to see that they're continuing to stand up to the Russians in this beautiful city, which has got an amazing history. The Ukrainians share many values with us, and Americans need to understand that. And it's humbling to see that they're struggling right now politically to some degree because they're allowing themselves to have honest discussions, which is something that is not happening in Russia. and Americans should value that as well. This is a partner we want to be partnered with and side by side with. It's a country that wants to move in the way of democracy, freedom of thought, freedom of expression, and we in our own country should protect that and make sure that we covet it like we should in our own country.
Glenn Korn, thanks for being here for Dispatches from Kyiv.